Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining us tonight for this conversation between Farrell and Phong. It is a particular pleasure to welcome Phong to the gallery. As many of you know, she's the co-founder and publisher of the Brooklyn Rail, but also one of the great conveners of artistic life in New York City. As a writer, artist, curator, and tireless champion of artists and ideas, he has helped shape the city's cultural landscape through decades of thoughtful dialogue and generosity. Tonight's conversation feels especially fitting in the context of Farrell's exhibition, The Stationary Traveler. Over more than 5 decades, Farrell has built a singular painting practice marked by conviction, sensitivity, and emotional depth. His paintings remind us that meaning is rarely immediate. It gathers slowly through observation, through experience, and through great care. There could be few better people to join Farrell in conversation. Fong's gifts has always been to illuminate not only what artists make, but how they think, how they live, and how a lifetime of looking becomes a body of work. We're very grateful to both Phong and Farrell and all of you here tonight for facilitating and enjoying this conversation. Without further ado, Phong and Farrell.
Thank you. Thank you, Valentina. Delightful to be here. I was thinking on the way on coming here on the E train, and I thought immediately, how cool is Galerie Sardine? Valentina's doing it, with Lindsay, and then I just realized that when my family fled Vietnam in 1979 on the boat, which is very small, no more than 80 feet long, with 80 people on it. We were sardine pack, lay on the lower deck, hand sardine gallery. But also, how cool is Farrell Brickhouse? I mean, a name that I can't help. And I couldn't help but to think of another cool name that I just read recently, the Canadian-born literary critic, believe it or not, Northrop Frye, whose book in 1947 is called Fearful Symmetry, which compelled all of us to rethink, reinterpret William Blake differently forever since, which is interesting because I used to memorize almost all of his famous poems. Getting smoked and stoned lately, that memory is fleeting. But I still remember a few lines from the Oratory of the Innocent. You might remember, the robin redbreast in the cage puts all heaven in the rage. The cage, William Blake believed, is the enlightenment, but encage him, his spirits inside, imprisoned. Children of the future age, reading this indignant page, for another time, love, sweet love, as though was a crime. So William Blake thinks love is identical with art. It's associated wholly with art. Art is a tree of life, and science is a tree of death. So it's kind of intense that we have to remember there was such thing as the presiding enlightenment when rationalistic thinking gained its confidence, slowly become extremely arrogant. There always emerge the encounter enlightenment. I don't know. You remember when Elon Musk leaped up with great joy in the second inauguration of Trump? And he say, I'm not just a MAGA, I'm a dog MAGA. We are going through a counter-enlightenment. So with that, I'm interested in Farrell's work partly because he seemed to take his journey, Odyssey, with a certain fluidity, a certain fearlessness. His personal odysseys, I'm interested. So that why don't we begin with that? I mean, that's an interesting thing because it requires slow looking in your work to understand the iconography and how the image is made and so on. And you seem to have given or surrendered to that early faith, early believability. So why don't we start with that first fundamental question? Where did you get that from? Was it from early on in your youth? Or was there a particular encounter that somehow gave you that confidence that you're going to do this, follow this faith?
Well, I'll answer you with another poem. We stitch and stitch to make it appear but a moment in time. And for me, we stitch and stitch. Did everybody hear that? Do I need to
Yeah,
repeat
that's
one?
good.
He heard it, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where that came from. You know, there was that other phrase.
See, that is in the poem, the
Getting
two
it
lines.
right. We stitch and stitch to make it appear but a moment in time. I learned that, I read that way after I'd been doing it, but then you get the justification in poetry.
Is that Yeats?
Could be. That's one of the first poets I fell in love with.
Cool.
But the other part was just getting it right. We work to get it right. And so if it comes fast, like some of these, and you know you've arrived, at least to put it aside and let it breathe. And other things, you know, you're just going to be engaged, and it's going to be a war of attrition. And it works out sometimes, evidently, you know.
That's very nice. I was
Thank you.
in the Louvre not long ago, and you know the rare we value good writing is so important to the artist and to the understanding of the work of art. You know, so I was briefly in the Louvre looking at Paolo Uccello, Barro San Romano, which is the last of the 3 panels that were commissioned for Lorenzo de' Medici. And I just remember how beautifully Sir John Paul Hennessy say, even the horses managed to die in perspective. Isn't that wonderful? So I wanted to say a few things about what. Let me read it to you, because I also admire very much. Hermetic, it may appear, the painting that he made. He's actually very savvy on social media, which he considers as the third incarnation. I feel that way too. But let's wait until later when I can ask you that question. But I wanted to begin by reading a few passages that critics, who are a dear friend of mine, wrote about Farrell's work. Let's begin with Berezowski. He wrote, Farrell Brickhouse is clearly unafraid to make a mess. In a statement about one of his paintings a few years ago, he spoke of a need to dive into the muck to come up with a new jewel of truth. Somewhere along the line, Brickhouse's brand of greedy yet lyrical gestural painting went out of fashion, probably because too many of its practitioners seem to have convinced themselves that pushing pen around was enough. Brickhouse clearly knows better. His impasto shows signs of both unaffected self-indulgence and genuine struggle, but usually he stops short of letting one become an end. How would you describe this in-between decision when you know this so-called experience making painting that somehow embody that subtle or unsubtle narrative that we began to describe?
I think the answers come after the fact. We work and try to be as true to ourselves as we can be, and then see where we've arrived. And one of the benefits of not showing too much was that I got to live with the work, and maybe a year later come back and see, now I know what to do. Or it's done for now. It's only done for now until one... It's only done for one now until one thinks of what else could be done better into it. Or a friend comes over and says, don't touch it. That's a kiss of death, because then one becomes fearful. of moving forward. As you know it's a process of arriving someplace of value, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
That's what we do.
Well, I remember reading somewhere because Ingmar Bergman was an admirer of Tarkovsky. I mean, whose masterpiece Under Ruflev. For some of you who haven't seen it, must see it again or experience it. But Ingmar Bergman says something very remarkable. He say, "I make my decision through intuition. It's just like throwing a spear into the sea of darkness. That's intuition. But then I have to send an army to find it. And that's the intellect. So I think you're right. You have to surrender to the process, let it sit. And the fact that you were not visible for a while turned out to be a benefit for you.
Yeah.
For your
I attach a little string to the arrow, so I have a chance of getting back
Pull it
there.
back?
Yeah.
I like that metaphor. All right, so here's Barry, and then Pepe Camel, another dear friend who writes for the Rail too. Pepe wrote, Mr. Brickhouse autobiographical statements revealed that he is fond of beachcombing, deep forests, and furniture from topless bars. Whoa. Beachcombing into the topless bar? In keeping with his beachcomber aesthetic, his paintings are executed on canvas lay over found wooden panels whose contours approximate a rectangle without quite achieving geometric perfection. The odd result is that his work sometimes seem more interesting as sculpture than as painting, which is very compelling. There have been only one or two sculpture now in the back, and I hope that you can go back and see it. It's quite an image, and it's interesting. So, what is your relationship? How you describe between two-dimensional and three-dimensional work? What oscillate between painting and sculpture?
I'm a dumpster diver, and the reality of finding things that already exist is kind of inspirational. And then one tries to find a way to animate that shape and to claim it and to make it useful in what I'm doing. But I think the sculptural aspect is no different than the painting aspect in that it's not linear. You start someplace, but it doesn't mean it's fixed throughout the life of the painting. So one can take away, one can add, until you arrive at the place where you feel you can stop, and that's of value.
Yeah.
But like for all of us, there's a process in coming and arriving somewhere where one can stop. And then time is the real test. And a few good friends will come in and say, don't touch it, which is a kiss of death, because you were just getting ready to make it better.
What kind of friend are you hanging out with? Come on. All right, some of them are here.
Yeah, raise your hands. Come on.
We'll talk about that. But I know that you went to Queen College.
Yes.
Which is interesting, because you were there in the early 70s. And to me, from what all the others, at least whom I interview, including Richard Serra, Judy Fab, who were there teaching, so they represent the emergent postmodern, minimalist impulse, as opposed to there were people who were already there teaching. For example, George Gojori. You name George Gojori.
Yeah.
You name also
Gabriel Adaman.
Both of them
Ilya Balatovsky.
Right. These are people who were students of Hans Hofmann, which is interesting. And then were Louis Finkelstein there?
Yeah, I didn't have much interaction with Louis.
Right.
I mean, you had to make your choices,
Right.
And some instructors would become naturally interested in you, and others,
Right. And I believe that Robert Pinckney Whitten was there too.
Yeah, I don't nothing to do with him.
Nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
So the choice you had to make. All right.
Yeah.
So there's one side, post-Hans Hofmann, right, which is push and pull, a certain emphasis on the idea. I'm sure some of you remember the term plasticity, plastic art. I mean, it's evasive now, no longer in vogue. But plasticity, according to Hans Hofmann, meant sculpture form flattened out. Ah, I caught him, red-handed. Okay.
And then made three-dimensional again.
All right.
It's a process.
All right, Farrell. I want to read the last one and we be more spontaneous. Okay, the last one is by Robert C. Morgan, who's no longer with us. And he always insists that I have to include the C in there. It's not Robert Morgan, Robert C.
R.C.
Morgan. Remember that?
Yeah.
And also, I'm a doctor. So here's what he wrote. Here is the proverbial painter's painter who knows how to evoke an allegory of daily life without a theoretical handbook. He is an artist who takes it upon himself to simply paint and stay focused on the act of painting until it is time to let go, essentially to let it be. So it's interesting because you describe, you have a class, it's a series where students were encouraged to put the end of the day or the class, all the paint accumulated, you recycle them, and they have to put on top of a fresh canvas, and then you take them back as if you're using this so-called natural patina, accumulation of paint,
Yeah.
to give birth to a new surface. So you guys know the work. Essentially, it's quite muted, somber, impasto or not impasto. It have a rather prevalent sense of, well, I did mention darkness, didn't I? But nevertheless, it's so interesting. I remember Chuck Close, who once told me when he was at Yale Graduate School, Bryce Marden would ask for the sediment, the paint sediment,
Yeah.
that would accumulate and sit at the bottom of the paint bucket. So he would use them in order to create his well-known monochrome paintings. It's the unpredictable gray scale, the dirtiness of it all. So how do you, in your case, you have just that similar drive to create that incredible gray, that muted tonality. I know when you work, wet to wet, you can achieve in some way similar palette, but yours is very distinct. Can you describe that process a little bit for us?
No.
Wow.
You had to be there.
Okay.
One of the things is that I can never throw anything away.
Yeah.
So everything has value.
Yeah.
And it was great with my students because they're struggling so hard to make this kind of graphic image, and that's how you learn, how you start. And they were so careless in just their resources.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was so much fun because once I started pulling the paint out of the garbage, they were kind of horrified.
Yeah.
And putting it on this canvas. But after a while, because there were 16 classes in the semester,
Yeah.
so this went on for 16 weeks. And there was a point where they started saying, well, who gets this at the end of the class? And I said, well, it was my idea, but here's another canvas in the garbage already.
Yeah.
And there's 5 other palettes.
Yes.
And all the years I did it, not one kid would pull the canvas out of the garbage and start.
Yeah.
I think maybe it was, everybody wants to be cool, and you're pretty humiliated if you're a dumpster diver in your own class.
Mm-hmm.
But it was really productive because they always were working to finish. And this was a process that wasn't looking for an end game. It was just this accumulation and exploration of what paint can do.
Yeah.
And you can take it off as well as put it on, because it was always oil. I made them work with oil.
Yeah.
And acrylic was so much more facile for them, and it dried, and they could put it away and not get too dirty.
Yeah.
But the oil was open. The next week you would start on it again, and it was still fluid, still malleable. And then I would get them home, and the work would begin.
Yeah.
I've had this beautiful, rich thing full of decisions that I may never have made.
Yeah.
And now I have something, it's as if I had found it on the street too. This thing I didn't make that was full of possibility. And it was great. And then to go back and go to the canvas that you started and see what lessons you've learned from that you can bring, you know.
Yeah.
the
So
can-
you perceive paint or material as a precious material, should
yeah.
not be wasted.
Oh, you know, if you were on an island, could you make alizarin red? I mean, no, it's pretty precious stuff.
Yeah.
But not to be feared, but just to honor.
Yeah.
You know.
Did you guys hear that? Not to be fearful, but to honor, which is so fantastic, because I just came back from the great show of the Kunin from 1940 to 48 to 50. It's at Princeton Museum. It's early de Kooning, essentially probably the most impoverished period of his life, when he was a house painter.
I did
And-
that too.
Yes, you.
I painted apartments all over New York City. Patrick Lannon's apartment I worked in, and some very up-end.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I did too.
Yeah, I thought I
was
saw
a-
you there. I thought that was
I think
you.
we might have even met some places because of the Koonin being committed house painter that inspired me to be a house painter. You mentioned it. No, seriously, if you go to see the show and you know what I meant when he say honor it. In other words, it was a bucket of paint, black and white, enamel. He was in business. If you look at the early painting, that was his first show at Charles Egan in 1948. No painting was so except for one painting, it's called Painting at MoMA, and that's due to Maya Shapiro, who insisted Alfred Borg would acquire the painting. Same thing did with Sidney Janus 1953, the Woman series, Woman won. The point is, when you look at the black painting at the time, as you described so beautifully, the Koonin did the same because he would recognize the nastiness of oil spill from car or truck that parked during the day in the Bowery, that it would, accumulate in the gutter, and that's what he wanted to paint. So the mutedness, the dark sensibility, the romantic, I would say, urban life kind of driven sensibility, it gotta be some of that in the embodiment of the paint. But let me ask you something else. I know that you admire, you love mythology, and poetry. We know that.
You all know that, right?
Well, there are young people
true.
in the back. They don't
It's
know that.
true.
There's a group of people who's very surprised and would love to hear what you explain and might share with us. The point is, mythology, poetry. We are talking about the whole immersive of different memories that can be embodied in our sensibility, our perception of life, our observing of things. So the point is, there are images in here that can be fallen into the realm of autobiographical, I would say. There are Jungian archetypal imagery that can be explored, but there are also a sense of surrender. There lies a sense of, I would say, spirituality. I was talking to Joe and Valentina of the sculpture that similarly to appear almost like the Venus Wildenborg of the Koonin, but it had wings.
Will you write that down? I mean, that's important.
Well, we're talking here. It's recorded. Hopefully not sent to FBI, CIA. We're in
listening.
trouble.
They're already listening.
Okay, but you know what I mean? In other words, how does an image get emerged? How do you get an image in your head and then it's made manifest on the canvas?
No. The problem is there's so many images in there. And there's all of art history to draw from, let alone one's own experience.
Yeah.
But you work to where you want to be. And the beauty of oil is the ability, it's so fluid. It's so malleable, and you can push it and pull it and turn the canvas 90 degrees and start all over again.
Yeah.
Come back the next morning and it's still awake and ready to go. It allows, then the question is ultimately, what do I need to say? What can be said? And what do I have to say today that rings true, that speaks to the life I'm living and has something to offer and is available to those who may view it. I have a poem, and that inverted bowl we call the sky, wherein the crouped living we roll and die. Lift not thy hands to it for help, for it rolls as impotently as thou or I. So, you know, it's all chance where we are. And then we make our best effort.
That sounds quite biblical. I'm sorry to say.
Old Testament or New? Well,
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Okay, so if the image emerged out of many attempts, successes or failures.
Well, the curse is you hit it right away, and then it's this beautiful hit. And actually, one or two of these are one hits. And, you know, the question over time, does it hold? You know, can I come back to it the next day and does it hold? Is it still true? And anything I do, it wouldn't make it better, just different. And
Yeah.
then you might as well start another one,
Right.
right? And bring it up to that level and then take it from there.
Yeah, you know, Farrell, you spoke of the flickering light and the pixelated image, which surprises me. But nevertheless, it can definitely coincide simultaneously. You made that remark in some interview in reference to, once again, the Kunin glimpse. Content is a glimpse, or glimpse as a content. Can you elaborate a little bit further? Because what you offer in that particular interview was slightly inadequate. So I just want to get fuller answer from you.
Well, I have my wife to thank for getting me computer literate. And, you know, you sit there and it's this miracle, light coming, it's all light, it's all about light. Without the light, there's nothing in our world, in our lives, and on a pixelated screen.
Yeah.
And it's all malleable. And that way it's like paint also, it's really malleable. But if you really want a good answer, ask Claude. I mean, that's remarkable. It's real. Claude has been telling me all these beautiful things about what I'm doing, and it's Claude, the computer program,
Oh,
the AI.
you see what I mean? Very elusive.
It said it was time.
Very elusive.
It said it was time for me to have a show. Really.
Okay.
I said it was.
It was listening. Believe me, it was listening.
No, but it's fascinating because that you know, equilibrium of keeping things from ancient times, archaic time, or what we would call the internal return, you know, which is why I was so shocked by the encounter with the sculpture. It looks very old to me, and some of the painting appeal that way too. But you mentioned the glimpse, the Kunin's glimpse, and I'm interested in that because it all comes to the very fact that how we move our hand, the gesticulation of what we would call physiognomy of movement. You know, this is why the whole idea of identifying people gesture, the way they walk, what we would refer in art making, particularly in painting, the speed of execution. So in when I look at your painting, I know that you mentioned a lot of artists that you admire, which I can understand. You love Corot, you love Rouault, you love Albach, and a few other artists too. Goya, the late Goya, I take it. Could be, okay. But there's one painter that came to mind, someone who I never met because he died so early. I think he heart attack when he was 51, I think. His name is Gandhi Brody. And Gandhi Brody have this similar treatment, paint treatment, the impasto, the interest on figuration that can be made or painted different, different time, different sentiment. And I remember when James Weldon, the photographer who came to my home, he identified the only one painting I have by Brody, which is a profile of a pigeon. And he said, I studied with him at Carnegie, Pittsburgh, changed his life essentially.
Wow.
And same with Fred Tomaselli. So it's fascinating to think about him in reference to your work, but then it brings up to this whole incredible dark sensibility of American painting, meaning the small, rather modest size painting. Let's say Albert Pinkham Ryder. Let's say, I don't know, Modern Hartley. In some case, will be Arthur B. Dove. So these are very consumable, fearful symmetry, as Ned Fry have described. What about Gersten too? So I'm trying to understand your ability to conceive,
steal?
not to steal, to extract. But if you think it's a steal, steal doesn't matter.
De Kooning, I think, said you beg, you borrow, you steal, but you make it yours.
Yeah.
And so great art is a conduit to something larger that is in yourself waiting to emerge. But yeah, all of those guys are there. I think, was it Dove lived on a boat on Long Island? And I was living on a boat when I discovered him.
Yeah.
And it was a small boat, and I fell overboard drunk with all my journals and paintings and salvage. It actually made them better, but it was a hard practice to follow up. But yeah, I mean, it's a rich history wherever we look.
Yeah.
And it's there for us to partake of and assimilate, and then see if we can share the best of it out of ourselves.
Yeah.
You know?
It's about open arm, the openness, the ability to
and
be
to
curious.
keep learning. To
keep learning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, you can see a paint splatter on the street. Actually, the inspiration for one of these sculptures was I found a spindle, that wire had been wrapped around, and it got ran over, and it was totally flattened out, and it reminded me, it was so figurative.
Yeah.
So I went and built that, and that was the beginning of that sculpture. So inspiration comes where we're open to it, and it could be the splattering on, I mean, it's been written in poetry, the splatter on a wall, or a great work of art on the wall. And,
well, we were looking at this very painting just the other day, How number 2, and I was saying it to Valentina that in the same trip when I was in Rome, visiting the Kooning, knowing that he did it too, similarly when he paid homage to John Keats' tomb, because John Keats died also on the sea, and when he came upon the visit, the epigraph on the grave say, whose name written in water, which became the painting at the Guggenheim, 1975. And so what is embedded under the water is exactly here. And I asked Valentina whether the couple could be you and your partner, subconsciously. Or consciously? Or consciously?
Well, I think things emerge, and then how does one see them and make them manifest?
Yeah.
And then not to over illustrate it and let it become just a graphic notation of the experience.
Yes.
So, and it's I find over time that I've been working in themes, so that entwining with the person I love is worthy of a painting.
Yeah.
Whose name is written in water, to me it meant nothing lasts.
Yeah.
Exactly. And this painting had a very you find forms that allow you to speak, and we have a very deep woods cabin, and nobody's up there except the people who own the property that let us build the cabin on. But we're pretty out there,
Yeah.
and sometimes there are things moving in the night
Yeah.
that make you embrace your partner closer and closer, and
Okay.
and I even in that moment I said there's got to be a painting in there
Yeah.
to grab, and so this is one of a series
Yeah.
of paintings that a friend who's in the room convinced me it was done.
Yeah.
I didn't really believe him, but it made me slow down and say it was done. And it's done. I could continue. I mean, if we had some paint, maybe I could see one or two.
No, 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 it's done. It's done. No, no, it's done. Leave it alone,
Okay.
Farrell. Leave it alone. No, no. I mean, okay, cool.
Do you know what Julian Preto said? It could be yours. Julian Preto, if you don't know, was an amazing gallerist. Really, one of the pioneers.
Yes, early on.
He
Yes.
would convince people, before Tribeca was Tribeca, he would convince landlords who had 10-story buildings that were empty because
Yeah.
everybody was moving to China,
Yes.
that if you let me open a gallery for free, I will bring people to your building. And it
Yes.
worked. He had this model, and people would rent the spaces once the gallery was there, and they came and found these cheap spaces.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I hope this was recorded, maybe not, but Julian was remarkable.
Yeah.
He was.
Well, he
unique.
held salons, and all kind of people come to him.
Yeah.
It's
He also
young.
created this because of these wonderful spaces he had. All these top Robert Ryman, Goldberg, Mike Goldberg would all come down to his space because they could put their big paintings that didn't fit on the 57th Street galleries.
Yeah.
So I was a young artist hanging out with Julian in the clubs downtown,
Yeah.
and he said, "Put a painting up," and it was sitting next to Robert Ryman.
Yeah.
And people said, "How'd you do that? How'd you get your painting there?" But it was
Right.
just hanging out with Julian.
Mm-hmm.
It was a unique moment down
Yeah,
there at
yeah.
that time, really. And I was fortunate to be there at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we do belong to our community, that's for sure.
I'm working on future collectors.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, great. Can I sign a contract with you later? Okay, good. We'll talk. Okay, we'll talk. So, what about the sense of scale? Your sense of scale, we know is fairly intimate, and each of them seem to has its own autonomy of scale. They're not uniform, in other words. Because, most of the time we tend to reinsure there's a certain size that we need to insist upon. It gives us a sense of security. Whereas here, it seems to me every single painting has its own scale or size. I rather prefer scale than size because I don't believe in size. Size is a mathematical idea. You quantify through number and measurement. Scale is very psychological. It's from the inside. So how do you describe that? Your own sense of scale?
I don't think I really ponder that much. I believed after seeing some of the names we've mentioned that you can make a really good small painting.
Yeah.
I mean, who is it? Some of Goya's paintings, 4 inches, 6 inches. If you only had a photograph and you said it was 12 feet, you'd believe it was 12 feet.
Yes.
So it emerges, all of this for me emerges over time. I've cut paintings in half. I've stacked extra panels on the painting to get the scale I want or the size I want. Also, as a young person, most of the time I was pretty broke, so I had to believe that I could make an important painting that was only 12 inches.
Yeah.
And I think that, and that art history has proved that's for sure, for true. There's a lot of great paintings and some of the names you've mentioned, that making important 12-inch paintings.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Well, Roy, the Moonlight Marine is 11.5 square. It's relatively small. Tell us more about that painting, Farrell, because I noticed how irregular the edges are, and I'm sure it's definitely intentional. But share with us why that painting was made the way it did, and without very little image in it, except for that it can be a sea of paint. and whatever else that we associate with?
One, again, it was a panel pulled out of a dumpster. And downtown, when the business was moving, they were throwing out maple, oak, teak, all this wood. They were stripping the buildings down, all this beautiful wood that you couldn't barely find in a lumber yard. Just beautiful stuff. So I would bring, and then I started buying birch ply once I realized it was a worthy thing to paint on. And sometimes I could canvas over it, and or linen over it. And sometimes it was just the beauty of the wood prepared and then painted on. There was a series of attempts to take my experience of water and fishing and bring it back to the body. Your pants are throwing me off because they're virtually the same color up there. Really, but to also, I was making paintings so stuffed with imagery that it was nice every once in a while to empty it out.
Yeah.
Just see what's there without all that imagery. And that's the basic story of that work. And there's a skyline at the very top that comes back to Earth-sky relationship. And it introduces the possibility of a scale to it.
Yeah.
But again, you come back and we see what we know. At least we start there with what we know.
Yeah.
The painting may offer other possibilities.
What about Orchid Lover? The decision to add another panel right below, how did that come about?
Well, for a while, that painting, for a while, sorry, so sorry. For a while, whoever came to visit didn't pay much attention to that painting.
Yeah.
And so I figured, and that was only the top panel.
Yeah.
And so one day I said, okay, but what was this painting going to be about? And by adding the still life on the bottom, it kind of took the wildness of the flowers and movement on the top and brought it back to something more traditional. But all of this thinking is kind of after the fact. You make these leaps and jumps, and then to move forward, one has to kind of understand what one's doing for the moment.
Yeah.
And the meaning and the revelation is a process, and not necessarily linear. So, but again, it was a tribute to, we're living up in the forest upstate, and it's so full of, my wife loves making gardens and all the flowers, and it would probably be just dirt if I was there. Maybe one plant. But so this was kind of another, to my muse.
Well, I mean, I have the feeling, looking at it, so the top panel, the larger panel, must have been painted over many, I don't know, maybe months even. Where the bottom, when it's added, it must have been painted last because the surface revealed itself that it's less labor.
And I also knew what I was doing at that point. The top, I was like winging it, and then the bottom, I had to understand. Okay.
So the top came slow, the bottom came fast.
Yes. And I realized anything more I did to the bottom wouldn't make it better, it would just make it different.
Yeah.
And it was adequate for what it was saying in the painting.
Yeah.
And other people came in and said, don't touch it, please.
Okay.
So.
All right, I mean, I'm not going to be too selfish. I have one more or two more questions, and I would love for you to participate. That's what we're here to do, to extend the conversation. But when I was reading everything that need to be read this morning about Farrell, that I learned that he's very incredibly in tune with social media, with internet. I mean, I did not have this until the arrival of Trump's first presidency. Would you believe it?
No.
Never had one. It was my late friend, two of them, brilliant people, Jonas Makers, the godfather of American cinema, and the other one was Paul Levirio, the French philosopher, who spent his life studying speed and technology. So they both told me to get an iPhone and use it for my advantage, running an increasingly a popular magazine. So I discovered that he's really amazing. He had gone through Facebook and now, Twitter, and all kind of thing. And he's really eloquently using it to write very personal. Yeah, oh my God, see that? Oh my God, that is like the opposite of the painting he made. So who are you? How do you divide the two personality?
Ooh, this is where we live. I could spend a half hour doing this just to get our forest. It's all, yeah, this is pretty amazing. It's amazing. Look at this thing's falling apart. It's performance anxiety right there. But yeah, it's an amazing tool. But
Have you gone through his Instagram? They are written with very lengthy, thoughtful, so-called observation or personal statements. I'm trying to do that now for the first time, which is so important because that's how it brought Obama to his presidency with so-called Facebook. No one countered him. Same thing with Twitter for Trump. No one countered him either. So we must find way to counter speed with slowness of culture. But we have to be aggressive. We have to counter the so-called coldness of technology with great warmth of the made object or made thoughts. And I'm impressed with the fact that he's managed to do both. You know, I mean, hollow to you. I'm very fascinated. Can we talk more about that later?
tomorrow
Person?
morning? Oh, no.
Yeah, let's do it tomorrow, okay? So, but for now, I think it's a nice place to stop, to welcome questions, if that's possible. So why don't we do that? Is that okay, Valentina?
I love that.
Why don't we begin with Julie?
Yeah, I got a question. I'm gonna think about that. Are you excited for the Knicks game tonight?
I'm a football guy. Sorry. I just like to watch them play. I played 3 years semi-pro ball myself.
No.
Yeah, that's why this finger goes that way, and this shoulder doesn't really work.
In high school?
Yeah, tail end of high school. I was a track star. And then I went to, much to my coach's dismay, I started playing semi-pro ball, running into people 100 pounds bigger than you.
Was it small forward or guard?
I was defense.
Defense.
But came to it later. Defense is easier to learn than offense. So I was a defensive back.
Okay.
And it was wonderful.
Yeah.
But I didn't last long.
Okay.
Too you know. Yes?
Brutal. Okay.
It's probably illegal that I'm asking a question since this is my gallery and we've spoken for hours upon hours to my great delight. But more than a question, I guess, what I wanted to bring forth for the audience that's here that in many cases may know because there's a community of people who have grown alongside you in the arts in the last many decades in New York City. But for those of you who may not, and also always nice to hear it from the horse's mouth, you've lived an incredibly rich, multi-chapter life, a life of, in many ways, as I observe it, a life that has kind of paralleled the kind of intense ebbs and flows of the city we live in, a life of great excitement, but also that has taken some really unexpected side paths. You know, he was a deep sea fisherman in Montauk for a number of years. He just yesterday told me while he was here that there was some kind of shipwreckage and he's trying to save all this material from the
Chum. It's called chum.
That. And he's standing between two ships and a shark comes and almost eats him from below. I mean, the guy survived the World Trade Center towers. He was in the basement of the towers when it happened.
We were walking down.
Stand corrector. Survived a hard life in the 70s of many kinds of intense challenges, and similarly encounter great bounties adopted a beautiful son, Andre. You've lived so many lives, and it's so rewarding to see how much of it exists captured emotively in your work. But I thought it would be lovely to bring it forward for these folks to hear from you how you've kind of traveled this very New York life.
Well, I know I'm going to get in trouble later for this, but so much of my story is entangled with my wife's life. And earlier on, she was an acclaimed documentary filmmaker. So she did a number of amazing documentaries. Some of them were on HBO, and they made their way in the world. And if anybody's interested, her name's Beverly Peterson, and they can find her. She's blushing right now. She's turned red. Her head's between her knees. And I know I'm going to get it later. But a lot of my story is, we've been together a long time. We met on fishing boats and been together a long time. So a lot of my story is there. But it's just a life lived in New York City and growing up. I feel blessed that I came up in this very tumultuous but open time. Growing up, I was born in 1949, and so it was the city was very open. Coming into Tribeca before it was even called Tribeca, just by accident of birth, being open, and it was a tumultuous life, violent life, a lot of good stuff, and I don't want to go on and on because it's too much. But I think, what is it to move a blue 2 inches to the left when you were facing 8 years in prison for assault on a federal marshal? So there's courage in the life lived and taking chances. When they're worthy chances to take. So,
Well, that's what happened to Guston too, when he shifted from abstraction to figuration, because he wanted to tell the story.
Yeah.
So I think one of the most failing attribute of the liberal left is that they forgot that story, narrative, personal journey are seriously entwined and lived experience through each of our cases. In fact, you might remember when Chuck Todd talking to Kellyanne Conway in the first inauguration. Remember, they were fighting how much the bigger crowd, Obama or is it Trump? And then he was frustrated. He looked at her and say, "Please give us the people fact. We need to know the fact." And she looked at him and said, I give you alternative fact. Remember that? So, which is fascinating. One of the philosophers that I'm reading heavily now is Neapolitan born, 18th century, maybe one of our most important counter philosopher. His name is Giambattista Vico, V-I-C-O. And he had this amazing philosophy. It's called Verum factum issum. Fact, the word fact from Latin is factum. It means made. Things are made. So verum factum means truth is made. Made is what artists do, or people to make things, and that's our truth. And they forgot about that. It's a disaster. So the point is, from Valentina, basically pondering about your journey, I think it's in the work, Valentina. It's in the work. It's just you have to look a little bit closer rather than the painted surface. You just have to look and feel the mood, the sentiment, the articulation of paint infused with the made images, or the image itself infused with the paint. And then you feel the story. Yeah. It's exactly what we are doing. It slows things down, and I think the execution or speed of execution is so essential. I mean, it's the sense of texture. Texture is made. It didn't come out anywhere, and you have to feel that. Every texture varies. It's not identical. And that's why it fits to me, why it requires a various size that it does. It refused to be uniform. So think about that for a minute. Ununiformity of scale, then the texture from which it get made upon. That's two things. Now I'm thinking about it. Okay, next question. Yes?
It was so interesting to hear that you were such an athlete and to think about the way you were talking about oil and like the sculptural quality of your painting and pushing and pulling. And I was wondering if you feel like that's or if and how you feel like that athleticism or that love of moving your body turns up in your work.
Great question.
Can you repeat it, Phong, so it's in the video?
That's a long thing to repeat.
Yeah, she's asking.
No, it's a good question. Repeat the last sentence of that.
I'm curious how you feel, if you feel like your athleticism or your love of moving your body shows up in your work.
I play music when I paint. My past is always present in my life, but when I paint, I'm not thinking about tackling somebody.
They're not big paintings, I'm sorry.
But again, in the scale of one's life and what any of us have lived through, what is it to move that red 2 inches to the left and see what happens? All the things we lose during the course of a life. I hate losing a painting because I got greedy and I went too far. But then 2 days later, it's this unique thing I could have found on the street, and what would I do with it? And then there's a way back in. And what's fascinating too is that I know my experience is, in a sense, not unique. I see people going like this because that's part of what we share as creative people. How do you make something of value? What does it take to make something of value? And that's the life's process that we live. And some good days we seem to succeed and step back and say, wow, I'm pretty good. And the next morning you wake up and say, what was I thinking? So that's the way it goes.
Yes.
Would you say that your work is, to preface my question, was just looking at Marshall McLuhan and he was talking about the visual as being distancing. And which is what all this, computer stuff, all that is very distancing in a sense, but I feel like your work is more active, more, you use other senses. You don't just use the visual in the fact that you go deep into the canvas rather than just make images. I don't think you're making images. I think you're exploring in a different way than visual into the paint. Pushing the paint around and I don't know how you feel about that, but I think you're using more senses than just the visual.
Well, tell that to my wife, that I have more sense. And we can all come up here and...
Cool. It's not cool this warm. It's that side of it.
Well, interesting question in a number of parts, but to make something that's human, that's accessible, that speaks to what it is to be here now, is a worthy goal. And we work to them. It's rare that it happens like that. You have a good day, you have a good start, and it's almost a kiss of death when you have a good start, because then anything you do immediately is only going to bring it back down. But that's the engagement. That's the engagement, to make something worthy. And with all that's going on in the world, all the horror, all the loss, all the sadness, it's worthy to take a risk and see if one can make something of value. And that speaks to what it is to be here now. And history will make its judgment later on, but meanwhile, you took your shot and made something that you feel has some value to it. And evidently, a few people think that, you're on the right track, for the
Well,
moment.
that was more like a comment from a critic rather than a question, but I understand her perspective, her insight. It's about warmth. You know, it's about warmth against coldness, really. It's there's a beautiful few lines from Rumi. He actually wrote a beautiful poem. It's called Eden Poetry, where the poem belongs is in the warmth of the heart. It dies out the cold. So even if you eat my poems while they're fresh, what you're eating is your imagination. So there's that, you know, in the work. The fish quiver when it take out the water, and then it's still. So I think in order to make each cases for each paintings that you see here in the show, it has to go through what I like what his term, hot-worn unity. And that hot-worn unity is hot-worn inner freedom. And that could only be revealed when it's been loved from the warmth of the chest through the hand. You know, how about one more question? 3, 4 more. Okay, let's take one.
So you mentioned that you were in New York in the 70s, which is a vibrant artistic time. Is there a particular individual that you met that was impactful to you, either as an artist or musician, or just someone you met on the street that set you on a trajectory?
A lot of people I met on the street, but I feel.
Who would be the most seminal person for you?
Well, I was really blessed when I went to Queens College. There was some really extraordinary faculty there who took a liking to me and gave me time and offered me that this was a way of life I could do. But I had a friend who's not here anymore. He was much better educated than me. He was really handsome, and he had money, and he had connections in the art world. And I was living the life that he envied, this physical life, and he offered. I met him at Skowhegan School in '72, and he knew Robert Wilson, he knew all these luminaries, and he was an introduction for me to this other way of being. And when I was really broke, he would always loan me money and stuff. And unfortunately for him, that he could never meet his own goals. And he took his life early on in my relationship with him. And it was devastating to lose such a friend. But he was really an introduction to a way of thinking and living an artist's life. And we had a great time together. And there were any number, you know, all of us have people that have been in our life that were seminal to what it was we became. And he was certainly one. I miss him, and he put me through hell trying to keep him from doing stuff. But he opened up a world and showed that it it was possible to live this life and of making things.
May I ask where you would hang out with him in New York?
Anywhere we want. Well, you know, there was all these after-hour clubs all the time. You know, Club 82 on the Lower East Side, run by these two ladies. It was a great club. All these seats coming down in this balcony, and it was, you know, also very open. And they were just create this place where everybody could feel safe and have a great party. And there was all these clubs that would last 6 or 7. Magoo's. Yeah, well, that was a great bar in a way, you know. But I had a friend who ran a number of clubs. He was really
Lexus,
connected.
Kansas, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It was a great time, and you know, you didn't even go out until midnight. By then, I've already had 6 hours sleep now. You know, it's like crazy.
Well, let's not be nostalgic so much, all right?
Yeah.
Let's move forward a little bit uplifting. What's going on, young people? Know that how they go. Here's a young person. Hello. Can you stand up and speak in a robust voice? The next, yeah.
So I was wondering, when looking at your paintings, obviously, as you said, Phong is sort of a darker tone, but you bring in these pearlescent and sparkles almost, like the one in the back around the corner. The red one, there's sort of this like ruby sparkle happening. I was just wondering when you started to bring in those sort of pearlescent paints, or if you started to use them for a specific reason.
Good question.
Well, again, when Tribeca was very turbulent of people coming in and out, and it wasn't even quite named Tribeca, and people would move in and then move out, and some had families, and they would just throw everything onto the street. And I found all this kids' glitter in there, and I would bring it home, and then I had a friend who was designing automotive colors for car companies, and to make that metallic quality on the cars, they used glitter. And once he saw what I was doing with it, he gave me about, I don't know, maybe 50 quart jars of a whole palette of glitter, all different gauges. It's amazing stuff, but it's like, you know, so seductive that one has to really treat it as just another material that has to earn its way into the painting, or it just becomes gratuitous. And so a lot of the paintings have the glitters underneath, and the painting takes on a metallic sheen because there's another layer of oil paint on top of it. And for me, it's very additive reductive process. But I have a whole palette of the stuff. And Chris came in the other day, and we were talking about using glitter. Chris Martin, who uses glitter too.
Accessibly.
Yeah. Yeah.
For Martin's case, hello.
Yeah, Chris's use of glitter is more performative. It's part of the making of the painting. And for me, I kind of draw with it. It's almost like sand painting. A lot of time the canvas is horizontal, and I'll use it to draw the outline of a figure or fill in a place. But like everything else, it has to earn its way in, or it's just gratuitous, you know. But it's fun stuff. But it gets in your eyes, your ears. You wake up in the morning, you glitter on your pillow. It's just really scary stuff.
Well, I mean, I think that may conclude our conversation here. I just wanted to add one last thing, which is so important. You know, you don't understand the artist's journey until you talk to him or her. So I feel privileged talking to you.
Thank you.
Learn a
Thank
lot, and what really above all, that somehow have this amazing aura of humility. You know, which I can't help but to think must have been 1875, I would like to say, before the last chapter of Moby Dick was written. So Melville was very frustrated and guilty, feeling guilty, not able to make the trip to his friend Hawthorne, who lived not far in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. And his reason was so beautiful, which he blamed this term that I love very, very much, my ruthless democracy. Could you imagine great writers like them have to write at night and weekends? Because they have to tend to their land. They have to tend to the cornfield, fixing things in the land, you know. So basically what he's saying, if my writing is the most important thing, everything else doesn't count, then democracy will fail. So it have to create this amazing equilibrium and equal worth of everything that we do. And I think that's referred to the life he had lived, as you described, Valentina. So with that, look at the painting with pleasure and buy one if you feel inclined. Thanks for coming, you guys.